thanks everyone for joining. I'm James Cox, Director of Platform Business Development for Network Optics. On today we have VCA Technology, and we have Rob, Simon, and Kevin from VCA. They'll be presenting a solution, as we've called it, a total solution at the edge, which is basically a VCA AI camera embedded with our media server. So really cool for like serverless applications. At the end of the guys' presentation, we'll have a kind of like an open forum between the four of us, kind of just discussing serverless applications and the advantages of them and what it can do for the market. And then we'll open up to any kind of questions. Feel free to type any questions throughout, and we'll get to them by the end of the webinar. So on that note, I will hand it over to Dr. Rob Dupree and let him kick off his presentation.
Okay, thanks, James. It almost sounds like you don't believe it. That's the thing there. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so my name is Rob Dupree. I'm the product manager here at VCA. And today we're going to talk to you about NX Embedded. So a quick overview of what we're going to go through. So we'll give a little introduction into VCA as a company and talk about our analytics platform. Then we'll dive into our IPA camera hardware and also talk about the plugin architecture that has enabled us to develop our plugins for our analytics and also NX Embedded. And then I'm going to pass over to Simon, who's our technical manager, who will give a little demo of one of our cameras running NX Embedded with one of our applications and talk a little bit about how that's all installed and configured. And then, as James said, we'll go back to a kind of forum about the advantages of serverless technology solutions. So, who are VCA? So we are a UK software developer, and we've been developing our analytics since about 2012. So we've been in the market a long time, and to date we have about 1.5 million of channels of our analytics running around the world, and that's across both our cameras but also our server business as well. And when it comes to analytics, for us, there's kind of 3 key pillars that we try and maintain as we develop and release new products, and that is to keep the analytics as simple to use as possible. So looking at things like integration, obviously keeping it as accurate as possible, and we retrain our algorithms all the time, and we make sure that they're really applicable to our use cases. And of course, keep it cost effective, because you can have the best analytics in the world, but if the cost of ownership is unrealistic, then it simply won't be deployed. And so we find keeping a balance of those things is really important, and actually NX Embedded as a plugin combined with our IPAI cameras and the analytics at the edge, I think ticks off pretty much all 3 of those pillars in a really conducive way. Just some other information. So we're actually owned by a Korean manufacturer called UDP, who manufactures our cameras, and of course we'll go into more details about the cameras in a minute. Okay, so a little intro into our analytics. We have a product called VCA Core, and that is essentially an analytics pipeline that's made up of our trackers, and we have a number of different trackers for different use cases. On top of that, there's a rules engine, and that allows us to do things like the zone interactions, for anything from simple, person is in a zone or crossed the line, all the way up to hyper complex logical rule combinations where you're looking at a person in a zone has now gone into another zone, is not in this place, is now in this place within a certain period of time, and really sort of any combination thereof, really. And I think most importantly for the core analytics is the metadata that it produces. And that's metadata both on what the tracker is doing, so where the people are, what they are, what they're doing, and of course the rule events as well. And it's the metadata that's consumed by our external partners. And so NX Embedded is a good example of that. The metadata from our analytics is pulled into the VMS and visualized and is made searchable by the technology that NX provides. So VCA Core as the analytics pipeline can be packaged up into a number of different iterations, one of which is something called VCA NX. And this is a server application designed to basically allow you to retrospectively add analytics to an existing IP camera estate that's working with Network Optics VMS. So you can install a server and essentially have us process those cameras, and then we will feed that data in a fully integrated way back into NX Witness, where you'll be able to use the NX Witness interface to do searches and so on. And so it's again a pretty much seamless integration when it comes to getting our data into NX. The other pertinent version of our VCA core is the Edge AI plugin, and this is essentially the plugin that allows us to bring our analytics onto the camera IP AI camera platform, and again fully integrated with NX Witness through the NX Embedded plugin. So I mentioned we have a number of different trackers, and I think as I said, we've been in the market for quite a long time, and we've identified that really a one-size-fits-all solution really isn't workable. And so we have a number of different trackers that we've developed specifically for applications. So the deep learning people tracker, for example, is focused at obviously detecting of people in very busy, dense scenes. So a typical use case for this would be something like retail, where you may have a very busy shopping center or shop where you're still looking to do accurate people counting. You may want to have highly accurate alerts for things like waiting time or the number of people who are in a queue, for example. So this is a tracker that is focused on high accuracy for that use case for things like business intelligence and reporting. The deep learning object tracker is a slightly more generic tracker that focuses not just on people, but also things like vehicles, so different types of vehicles, cars, van, truck, etc., as well as some object types like bag and bicycle, for example, and provides a bit more flexibility in where you can deploy it. So we would typically see this working in things like traffic applications. It'd be used for things like security on perimeter detection. It can also do things like static object detection, so for more use cases around like car park monitoring, for example, this is the tracker that allows you to do all of those things as well. Okay, so moving on to the IP AI camera hardware and of course the architecture that allows us to run our plugins. So starting with the cameras themselves, so there is the IP AI camera range has an extensive range of 5 meg up to 4K and beyond, across a whole range of different iterations. So whether that's domes, whether that's fisheyes, whether that's turrets, 360s, multi-camera, multi-sensor, there's a huge range across a number of modalities as well. So whether it's IR, RGB or thermal. The existing range, this is a subset of the range that we already have released. There's pretty much a camera for most use cases, and if not, we will likely have something on the roadmap that will be released soon that should tick it off. So on the right hand side here is a few of the cameras that are in development and should be released in the first few quarters of this year. And I think it's important to mention this roadmap because it applies not just to our camera hardware, but also to our analytics. We develop solutions for our customers in mind. We look at the market, we try and keep on the forefront of what people need and release products and solutions that do that. And as I said, that applies both to the hardware and the analytics. So that dialogue with our customers is really important to us. And it's why we go to trade shows with people like NX to be on, to be visible and open those discussions and help inform what our products are doing. IP AI camera range is built on a standard platform. So the nice thing about this is pretty much every camera in this range has the ability to have NX Embedded installed, and again has support for local storage on the camera up to 1 TB. Okay, so we've mentioned the camera hardware and the range. Let's talk a little bit about the platform itself. So the cameras are built on an Ambarella SoC, and that provides a nice powerful CPU, but also provides hardware acceleration to allow us to run our deep learning solutions, whether that's our trackers, so the deep learning people tracker, the deep learning object tracker, or our ANPR, MMCR solution, or things like facial recognition. And because it's a plugin based architecture, the flexibility there allows us to develop individual plugins for certain scenarios. And the next one that we've developed is NX Embedded, and that is, as James mentioned, basically a full version of the NX Media Server running directly on the camera. And we've spoken a little bit about plugins, and obviously those are running in the camera, but of course the camera itself is producing metadata as well. And so we have a number of applications that consume that metadata externally. So for example, we have something called VCA Forensics. That is a forensics metadata search tool that allows us to consume the metadata produced by our analytics, and essentially provide a nice simple user interface to allow you to filter down what could be tens, even hundreds of thousands of objects to find something of interest. And likewise, we have a retail trend application that's focused around business intelligence, retail reporting, and dashboarding. And again, that's just kind of consuming our metadata and doing something with it. So let's talk a little bit more about the actual plugins themselves. So kicking off with NX Embedded, which is really the star of the show here. So as I said, this is essentially a full version of the VMS running on the camera. And in some respects, there's not much more to say to that, really. It's as far as a user is concerned, when you interact with this iteration of, or this instance of NX, it will behave and act exactly like a full server deployment would as well. So for the camera, that provides video storage, it provides metadata and event storage, and of course it provides all the search, review, retrieval, video functions that the NX client provides. And so again, the goal here is that it is exactly the same as it would be with a server instance. And so you have the NX client that you can interact with it, but you also can use NX Cloud as well to manage these cameras and instances as well. So you've got your NX embedded on the camera, and that's obviously consuming and recording the video. But really the power, I think, comes from the integration with our analytics and the combination thereof. So we have a couple of examples of how the Edge AI plugin generates metadata and can be reviewed and combined with the video data that NX Embedded is recording as well. So this example, we've got our face recognition plugin. Here we can define in the camera face profiles. So you can upload an image. This is our CTO Jason, and you can see the camera's search results based on the camera is monitoring a field of view, and when it detects a face, it's then doing a similarity search, comparing that face to any of the profiles that are present, and basically adding more and more metadata to that detected object. And so that metadata around that object is then passed seamlessly to NX Embedded. And here you can see some snapshots of Jason as he walks down this field of view. We can see the metadata that's been associated with that visualized in NX. And of course, you've got the ability there to retrieve the video, and you can see that particular object and review that data and search for those objects as well. Outside of just the face recognition, that plugin also gives us age and gender. So if you're doing, again, kind of the retail application, you're wanting to do a bit more about demographics, then of course, age and gender is more metadata that's assigned to our objects. And really that's a sort of universal. When we assign metadata, the goal is to have that visualized and searchable within NX itself. So we've spoken about face detection and recognition. So similar concept with regards to automatic number plate recognition and make model color recognition. And again, this is an example of, we have a camera set up in one of our customers, and this is the ANPR software recording license plates as they come through the entrance, and also identifying visually the make and model of that vehicle as well. So this is not a lookup system where we're going back to, in our case, it would be the DVLA in the UK and finding the information based on the license plate. This is an appearance-based model where it's been trained to detect and recognize both the make and or the brand and model of the vehicle, as well as the color. And again, this is essentially metadata associated with a tracked object. So again, we can push that into NX Embedded, and then we get the nice synchronization of, the snapshot of the license plate, for example, which of course is searchable. I can do a character search based on the data we have on the number plate, and of course we can pull back the video associated with those snapshots and show you, that car entering or exiting. I mentioned earlier VCA Forensics, and this is a little snapshot of the UI for that. So we find a lot of requirements for our metadata to be searchable, and that of course is a challenging thing to do, especially on very large estates. So if you've got a camera network of kind of 40 or 50 cameras, you could have upwards of 50 to 60,000 objects per hour that you're detecting and recording. And so forensics is designed to allow you to search and filter that data as easily as possible. So we can do filters on things like time and obviously the camera that the object is in. We can do it based on metadata about that we've generated. So object type, whether it's a person or a car or a van, for example, color information. So with people, we can do things like top color and bottom color, as well as a similarity search where you can upload an image of a person, and then we can do a similarity on all of the objects that we've detected and see if we can see something that matches that. And again, I want to just focus a little bit on the architecture of how this works now that you've got everything running just in the camera. So because the camera is processing the analytics and it's recording the video footage, you've got the metadata and the video available in a self-contained package. And so the forensic server, which is a lightweight server that just basically consumes metadata, stores it in a database and provides you search options, that forensic server has the option to connect to one or many of those cameras and pull data down. So, and again, this is not just with respect to our analytics. The media server and the functions that Network Optics' VMS provides allows us to say, well, we found an object of interest in our client, for example. We can now go back to the media server that's running in the camera and pull some video footage about that particular object and show that to our client. So it really enhances the ability to do all of that in a self-contained package. Okay, so lastly, I'm just going to talk a little bit again about the benefits of this as a solution. So we have a massively wide range of cameras across a number of different form factors and modalities. When you combine that with the analytics plugin, which again provides you a large number of different options, whether it's analytics for detecting objects and zone interactions and behavior to facial recognition and ANPR, what that comes together as is a highly flexible deployment option. You know, you can basically put any of our cameras in any of the scenarios that you want. You can run any of our analytics on that platform because they're generic, and typically we'll find a combination that will do what you want it to do. Because NX Embedded is built into the cameras as well, that integration is about as seamless as it comes. The system is designed to detect and localize the analytics inside, so there's no configuration. I don't need to tell NX where the camera is or the camera where NX is. That's all done seamlessly. So once the analytics is enabled, the metadata is stored by NX, and then you connect and do what you would normally do with NX as you go. All our cameras are manufactured in Vietnam and Korea, so are NDAA approved, and the software is developed by VCA in the UK. And I think probably one of the strongest things here is the value proposition that this presents. So our analytics and our analytics and plugins are licensed perpetually in a one-off fee. And of course, when you take into account the cost of ownership of a camera, the analytics in the plugin form factor, and the fact that you're no longer requiring big servers to do your analytics or potentially even your VMSs, you know, the cost proposition I think is great. So that's it for me. I'm going to pass over to Simon, who's our technical manager, who's going to talk a little bit more about the embedded installation and hopefully give a little demo of one of our applications running at the edge.
Thank you very much, Rob. So I just need to try and grab control of the screen in order to move forward with this one.
Just do it now, 2 seconds, and you should now be the presenter.
Thank you very much. So hopefully you should be seeing my screen now.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the infrastructure, an overview of the architecture of NX Embedded solution and how users can leverage the range of analytic plugins that we offer in order to provide a rich source of information into NX Witness. So to start with, I just want to quickly review our current integration that we have, just so that we can give a quick refresh of where we are at the moment and what we're going to move into. So our current architecture is that we have a product called VCA NX, which is a fully integrated solution for NX. So the idea here is that our analytics server sits on the same system as NX, or it can sit on a completely different platform to NX, and it can be fed video footage and then feeds out metadata back into NX so that all the data is there and available for you to search and create your rule configurations on. So to give a little idea here, what I've got here is loads of cameras feeding into NX that you can see in the diagram here. The video data passes to our NX server, which then passes data back. And then you can use your NX Witness client in order to interrogate that information, define rules and camera settings in order to decide how you want to react to those events. So this solution itself is a computer-based solution. So it uses x86 or and ARM platforms in order to process that analytics information. It requires a NVIDIA GPU, and it works on a range of operating systems ranging from Windows, Ubuntu, ARM, and NVIDIA. The one benefit about this system as well is that you could have multiple VCA NX servers servicing your analytics requirements. So it's very easy to spread the load of many channels of analytics over many servers. So it can keep your costs low in order to buying just the equipment you need rather than buying expensive equipment. So moving on from where we are currently, which is where we are there, we can move into our NX embedded solution. So this is the idea of using the camera itself as the platform providing all the services that you need. So we load up our camera, which has our analytics loaded on there already. And now we load our NX embedded version, which is now a fully integrated version of the NX platform that you're all using at the moment. So the really good benefit here is that there is no infrastructure required. There's no computer resources required at all to run these services. This is basically just fitting the camera up, configuring the camera, which is part of the installation process, and the camera has everything inside it needs in order to process and store information. So ranging from the analytic plugins that we offer, which I'll go through in a couple of seconds, down to just the recording system, which is the NX. So the installation and configuration process. So I've tried to make this as simple as possible. As Rob mentioned earlier, it is quite a simple process. So initially, it's finding your appropriate micro SD cards for storage. So this can be anything ranging from a small 32 gig storage card all the way up to a 1 terabyte card. And this is all used on the camera in order to store the program files and any recorded data that might be on there. Then once you've got that installed, you just need to upload the NX embedded plugin. So that's just a very simple process using our UI of, if it's not already loaded, just selecting a file and uploading it as you would sort of do with any kind of program installation. Then once you've got it up and running, you then just need to decide which analytics plugin you'd like to use. So we've got a range of plugins available. They range from our analytics plugin, which includes the DL object tracker for accurate tracking of our objects, all the way down to facial recognition and ANPR. So you just choose these. They're very simple to configure. You can do this through the NX client itself, so you don't actually need to navigate away from NX to do this. You define some zones, and then you just simply turn on the analytics, and they will start feeding information back into the NX platform. Then once you've selected your analytics, you then just have to use NX Witness, the client or the UI, in order to access the information and start interrogating the data and getting what you want out of it. And that's really the 3 steps to using it, so that it's very simple, very easy to deploy. So what I'm going to do at this point is I want to see if I can move over to just a demonstration. So we've got a camera which is doing our facial recognition software plugin, and that's running our NX embedded. And I'm just going to move over to that. So I'm hoping that you can now see the screen that's on there. So what I'm showing in front of you is just our standard NX client. So this is connected to a range of different systems, and there's a system here which I'm loaded into, which I'm just going to call up. So it's worth noting this system here is in a different part of the world. So we're putting back all the information from the SD card on the camera, and this is all being presented on the page here. So I have a camera here, and if I load up the camera, we can see it's just an office camera. And as soon as I load it up, you'll see that on the right-hand side, we've got the options in order to display notifications. And if I just go to display objects, what we'll see being pulled back now is all of our data being presented in NX. So we've got here, we've got faces being detected, and that information is all stored within inside NX, and NX is now presenting this data to us. So I can scroll down this and I can select different images to look at. And if I just pause this, I can then click on this image and it will take me to the recorded information within inside NX. So what it's doing here again is pulling back this information from the SD card on the camera and displaying it for me. And if I just move a bit further down on there, let's just see if we can find a face. So we go to this person here, so we can call up this person here and we can see exactly what's making them up. So one of the other benefits that we have here as well is because all the data is stored within inside NX, we've got all the same advanced search features inside NX as well that we can use. So if I go to the advanced option here, I'm displayed again with a list of all of the faces that I've got. And because, as Rob mentioned earlier, we have these profiles built into the cameras, so where the camera can match the face to a profile that it has, it can pass across that additional information to NX to allow us to search. So for instance, if we wanted to do a search for someone called James, we could just type in James in there, and then the system will retrieve all the images that has James in it. So you can see it's now playing back the information in on the right hand side, and it's giving us that additional metadata that we've passed across. So it's matched the profile for James, and it's even matched the group that James is in, which is in R&D. So one of the other things we can do then is we could expand that search, and we could search for everyone in the R&D department. So this is everyone where it's picked up a match for them in the R&D department. So this is all within inside the NX client. So we have all the advanced features that the client provides. So we've got the recorded information, we can export that information, and we can create bookmarks, and we can create events based on that as well. The same sort of experience will be with our ANPR and MMCR software as well, where all the data is provided into NX, and then we have the same search capabilities that you can see here. Okay, so that was just a quick example of how the face detection software can work, and as I mentioned, the ANPR software works very similar to that, and that's the end of it for me. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks guys. So yeah, we just thought we'd open up the floor to kind of having a discussion around serverless technology. So the NX Media Server, one of our core kind of components in our platform, has always been pretty lightweight, and we've always used a lot on kind of smaller gateway devices. We've had the ability to embed our media server onto a camera for a while, and it's just taken a kind of cutting edge camera vendor like yourselves to get it on there, which is great to see. So kind of like when we showed it for the first time at Intersec in January, the interest around it is pretty big in terms of serverless technologies. So obviously we've got a bunch of features coming out this year that lean really into that kind of direct to cloud serverless technology that allows you to deploy, for instance, the VCA cameras with the value of their embedded AI onto the camera, and then kind of use the AI to identify what's important that's coming from the streams and push only that to the cloud, right? And then we can kind of keep that into a cloud layer and have that for review at any point and any time without having to have any hardware on site. And with our kind of new cloud layer that's being launched this year, it allows you to have an unlimited amount of serverless kind of cameras connected to the system. You know, you can cluster them into hives, and then with the kind of the new cloud layer coming out this year, we can hive lots of systems together. So from now, you guys are kind of like pushing down that same kind of like serverless applications as well. Are you seeing a lot of interest in the market in terms of like pushing the relevant data to the cloud, or how are you guys finding like the kind of new push into serverless technologies?
Yeah, I think it's. Go on,
Kevin. Go on, Rob.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's something that it's funny for us, because I think if you had this conversation maybe, I don't know, a year ago, 18 months ago, this kind of would have been a non-starter. The idea that you could manage a massive estate of cameras from the cloud, the infrastructure wasn't there, the technology wasn't really there, and that's really flipped around really quickly. And I think that's partly because of NX's push to make this kind of low requirement VMS technology that allowed us to embed it on the camera, because realistically there's no other VMS that I'm aware of that we could run on a camera. It's just not a thing that's possible. And so I think we are finding at the moment the introduction to the market is the big thing, informing customers that this is now an option that's available, and Intersec was a really good demonstrator for that. I think people looked at it and went, oh, okay, actually this is something that we could really consider. And the nice thing I think about it is it's not necessarily just for new deployments. I mean, the fact that you've got or if you have an estate of cameras and servers and you've done all that infrastructure work and is set up, the nice thing about this kind of encapsulated package is I can throw this as an additional camera without impacting the rest of my hardware requirements. So if I extend the building, or I want to add a few more cameras for another use case, for example, I don't need to worry about extending my VMS server storage requirements to accommodate that. I can just throw 5-10 cameras in and run it as an independent encapsulated solution without impacting the rest of the architecture. So I think it's the flexibility that's really good, and opening it up to customers is yeah, they're getting blown away with it, which is a really nice reaction.
Yeah, for sure. I think on a couple of the points you mentioned, so just for everyone's reference on the webinar, our media server that VCI have embedded onto their cameras is our normal media server that you would put onto a server. So there is no difference in terms of feature sets. It's not like a limited or cut down version. It has the fully functioning VMS embedded onto the camera. In addition to that, the version that's embedded on the camera is also, you can still merge it. Kind of everybody should know our kind of Hive architecture. You can still merge it with a normal system. So like Rob was saying, if you have a site that is running NX and it's got a few hundred cameras, if you wanted to add some additional cameras, maybe at a more remote location, or just some more powerful cameras with the AI embedded like these guys are doing, you can actually merge that NX embedded camera with our normal NX server architecture as well. So it all clusters together to become one system. So from the NX media server point of view, it doesn't matter where it's installed or what it's installed on. So you can kind of really make this kind of like hybrid architecture of different devices. And like Rob said, if you're expanding a system because you've maybe installed an NX system a few years ago and you want to start adding some more cameras now that you see kind of the newer technology that's coming out with the face recognition built onto the camera and all these kind of things, you can still add that to your system without impacting your system. So it really adds an extra kind of layer of scalability, which is one thing that Network Optics has always tried to do, is make sure that our systems are future-proof and kind of have that enterprise scale to them. So yeah, no, it's good. Kevin, you wanted to jump in and say something as well. Did you still want to have one?
I think for me, James, it is the flexibility is really key here, because if you consider the range of cameras that we now have and just say, okay, this has got NX embedded on it. Unfortunately for VCI, not everybody wants analytics on every camera. So we built the structure so that you could say, okay, you have a camera, choose the camera. Do you want a bullet? Do you want a dome? Do you want a thermal? Choose the camera, has NX embedded on it. If you want an analytic on it, you add that. If you want ANPR on it, you add that. If you want face on it, you add that. If you want face and analytics, you add that. So it gives you an extreme amount of flexibility. You add that to what you guys are doing with your roadmap going forward. You know, the way I see it is that over the next sort of 6 to 9 months, there's going to be a lot more applications that will be coming out. There's a lot more flexibility that will be available. And really between us, I think we've come up with a really good, neat, tidy solution that's flexible, cost effective, and expandable.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I like the fact that, you know, if someone's rolled out with a specific analytic and then you guys come out with something new, so, you know, previously face detection would have been the one that a lot of people would be using, and then you've obviously now recently launched your face recognition. They have the ability to remove the old AI plugin and put a new AI plugin on there if they want to swap or repurpose the use of that camera, right? So I think that flexibility really is important, especially as kind of the AI industry in general is evolving pretty rapidly. So you don't want to be left behind, which is happening a lot at the moment, where people are being left behind with outdated AI models because they're kind of some of the earlier ones. The fact that you guys have that ability to, you know, update and swap out plugins as and when, I think it really does add that flexibility. And like you said, with the kind of roadmap that we have coming out this year, which we're going to start to introduce more and more throughout the year, which is still kind of fairly new to probably a lot of the people on this call, but really leaning heavily into adding more direct to cloud tools, you know, being able to manage multiple hives together into a single system, to increase the enterprise scalability of the system, pushing data directly to the cloud. It really kind of makes this NX embedded on your camera is even more powerful, because then you can run full enterprise scale operations without actually needing any maintenance of hardware in terms of servers or hard drives or anything anywhere. On that note, we have a couple of questions coming in. If anyone wants to ask some questions, feel free to throw them in. So let's see, we have a question from Rob Turner. Can we get a copy of this presentation sent to us? That would be a you guys question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, no problem at all.
Yeah, we'll make sure that it's available. The video will be uploaded to our YouTube as well, and I'm sure we can. Anyone can contact myself or any of the guys from VCA, and we'll get that presentation over to you guys. Next question from Martin Griffin. Can you record 24/7 to the SD card?
Yeah, so the answer would be yes. So all of as Rob was saying, it's that the NX embedded solution is a fully fledged NX witness server. So it'll have all the features that you have, and that will include 24/7 or motion detection recording, all down to the SD card that's on the camera.
Perfect. On top of that, just to add kind of some extra weight to that, when we released 5.0, we changed our backup methodology. So you can record 24/7 to the SD card on the camera, and then you could push just like some of the, let's say we're running some AI on the VCA cameras that are doing, let's say, illegal turn detection for cross section. When that event occurs, you can push just the specific events that you want to a cloud storage or to a NAS device or something like that. So you can have the 24/7 for 30 days for the security purpose, and then record like traffic violations, for instance, and push them to a different location for other purposes. So our kind of like new methodology for doing those backups allows you to get more use out of the AI on the camera, in terms of like making sure that AI, or if it's slip and fall detection in a supermarket, you might want to push that slip and fall event to a cloud or a NAS device for 90 or 360 days because of the potential litigation consequences of slip and fall. So you can do all those kind of things into the camera as well. So it really adds some strong flexibility to the architecture solution. Another question from Martin: do the cameras support Micron's industrial SD card that can go up to 1.5 terabytes currently?
That's probably something we would need to double check for you.
Okay. I know Martin, so I'll make sure you guys are linked up with Martin after this.
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things we are doing, James, just for information for the audience, is that we're given the option to have the NX license and the SD card installed at the manufacturing process. So it isn't something that our customers will have to do. We're going to have that option to do that for you.
Yep. I'll make sure that I'll put you in touch with Martin afterwards to answer some of the questions. From Danny Vanderberg, is the data on the SD card encrypted, and what is the expected lifetime of the SD card? So from the encrypted point of view, we have the ability to turn on archive encryption inside the media server. So we would be able to encrypt the SD card. And regarding the lifetime, I think there's a lot of variables involved with that, but I'll let you guys kind of take it.
And I think that's something, we've tested certain cards, and obviously we have to go by the manufacturer's recommendations in terms of what they say their life cycles are. I guess we're going to need to do a little bit more research on that and give you that information.
One thing I'll just jump in on, so we have worked quite closely with Western Digital with regards to, so they have a QD101 ultra endurance micro SD card, which is sort of has been optimized for this kind of scenario, because obviously SD cards traditionally, from a read-write perspective, they weren't optimized for this particular use case where you're writing a lot of data and reading a lot of data back. But yeah, we've been assured by them that this is this variety of card has much more of that taken into account. So as Kevin said, rewrite numbers specifically, we don't have, but we have looked quite closely at the market about what is the right storage solution, and gone to the manufacturers to make sure that we are, this isn't something that's going to fail 2 weeks after you put it in. It is designed for the long term.
Next question. If there are other brands of cameras existing in the system, can I connect them to the NX server installed in the VCA camera? Which is, I mean, in theory you can, but it depends on if you guys have stress tested that.
There'll be an upper limit to that, basically. So the NX embedded solution is designed really to manage itself, but as James said, it is a full version of the media server, so you can put all your cameras through it, and there's not a limitation on it for sure, but it is a edge device, so you will come up against capacity issues with regards to the storage, and of course there is a smaller CPU than you would expect on the server there, so you're going to come up against limitations. I would say it's not what we designed it for sure. It is designed as a sort of encapsulated unit for itself, so the answer is yes, but probably not a good idea.
Yeah, I think the main thing there, like you mentioned, is storage. As it's only, it's got a single SD card slot, so realistically, unless you're pretty low on your amount of days that you want to store for, you're really not going to want to put a lot of cameras through the one. But as Rob said, it's kind of one of those things where it's doable, and it will be one of those things where you will have to assess yourself if you're getting any IO speed errors or anything like that, based on how many cameras you're putting on it. The same way as if you install our media server on a Raspberry Pi, we have a recommendation of what you can put on there, but it's not limited, and you guys could overpower it if you want to. And you just have to, it will be one of those things you have to deal with the consequences for. Also, that question was someone from the NX team, so I'm gonna thank him for that later. Yeah. Moving on to Miguel's question. The camera's hardware ID is based on their serial number. If there is a big firmware update, will the NX license be void? This happens in VMs a lot because of the Docker's versions.
I think that's a question for your team, actually. I'm not sure, because obviously the hardware is not virtual for us, so the hardware ID should stay static. So
you're not Dockerizing us, right? We're installed directly.
You are installed on the hardware.
Yeah, so if we're installed on the hardware, then there will be no issues with VMs or Dockers. That's also an issue that's been solved in 5.0. So the VM kind of losing its hardware ID is not a problem anymore. We're getting the real questions today. Good. All right, moving on. Will the SD card support both video and metadata recording for the aforementioned forensic search?
Yes, is the short answer. Yeah, so all of the data is stored on NX for the camera. So forensics is a separate server application. It's again very small, and essentially it's just the storage of the metadata produced by the camera. So the metadata storage on the camera is actually separate from forensics, because we do a bunch of stuff with the forensics regarding you don't need 15 frames a second of metadata to do searching, so we reduce the amount that you store, but the video data that forensics pulls back to visualize, once you found an object of interest, that is stored on the camera and pulled back from the camera. So yeah, a little bit of a hybrid approach there, and actually we are leaning into this kind of serverless solution. There is a world where we're working towards forensics being a plugin on the camera as well, and so working a lot like NX, it would be responsible for the storage of its metadata as well locally, and then the client would connect to the cameras as well and pull everything from the cameras. So yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's indicative of the obvious next step with regards to how that would work, and so yeah, the short answer is at the moment there is a server that's recording the metadata and aggregating that from all of the cameras on the estate, but eventually what we're hoping is that will be another plugin on the camera, and again leans into the fully distributed solution.
Yeah, so from the network optics side, obviously we have our internal metadata database as well, where your plugin where you were showing like searching for James, before, that metadata that's being sent to us is all stored on the same SD card. You can, in our software, pick where you want to store that metadata database, but as there's only one storage device, it will be installed at the same storage location as the actual archive footage itself. But we shouldn't have any speed issues, as it will be an SD card, not a SATA drive, sorry. Cool. Moving on, are the CCTV images stored on the SD card encrypted? So that was the same as the previous question. Our NX Witness or our NX media server allows us to encrypt inside of our application. So you can put in a username and password in the system settings for your archive, which will then encrypt everything stored on the SD card. Obviously, that increases your resource usage slightly, but yeah, so everything can be encrypted onto the SD card. How Analytic can run with embedded NX in VCA camera?
So I would say easily in respect to that is the point of it. So the camera, and again, the nice thing about the IPAI camera platform, so built on top of this umbrella chipset, is that there is basically enough grunt within the camera to allow us to do all of the processing required for the video and metadata storage inside NX and run the NX media server, whilst also processing the video data and generating our analytics at 15 frames a second. So you know, there is a limit there. You can't do everything all at the same time, but actually realistically you're not going to have a camera that's doing ANPR, facial recognition and object detection all at the same time. Traditionally they will be, you know, specific cameras for specific applications, but you have got the ability to mix and match. So you can certainly run NX embedded and record all the video, and you can run the Edge AI plugin, which will allow you to generate the metadata from the analytics, and those work in harmony without any problems.
Perfect. We make and sell large thermal camera systems. On the analytics side, what's the lowest resolution they will work on, as some of our thermals are only 640 by 512, not for facial obviously, but for tracking, etc.
Yeah, so absolutely. Thermal was really one of the modalities that we started with, and actually the object tracking software that we developed 12 years ago, which is a motion-based tracker, we still see deployed often when it comes to thermal cameras, and likewise we're also working on deep learning appearance-based models that work on thermal as well. So with respect to the object tracker and motion, there is kind of no lower limit in regards to what we can process on. We're obviously used to processing on, you know, 360 by 240 type camera resolution, so there's really no lower limit there. On the deep learning side of things, you know, a reasonable resolution is good, and actually by the sounds of things that resolution of that camera is more than enough for what we would need as well. So our server solution, specifically VCA NX, we could add to an existing deployment. If you've got cameras and NX Witness already running, then we can just kind of plug into that and start feeding data into the VMS directly. So yeah, there's definitely options for that. I would say get in contact with us, and we could talk to you about what's possible. No problem.
Cool. And then Danny Vanderberg said thank you, and then Steve said similar to our RPI, which I'm assuming he's talking about the how to calculate how many cameras you can connect to it. And then we have Gary Mercer. Schedule full uploads from the SD card to a remote server or cloud.
Sorry, say that one more time.
Can you schedule full uploads from the SD card to a remote server or cloud? So from our side, from Network Optics, we can schedule, the backup of the data to a NAS device, or coming in the next few months, we have our object storage plugin, so that will push to any kind of cloud bucket like an AWS or Wasabi. So yeah, like I said before, you can either do it based on event driven, or you could just say like push all the data at like midnight, because obviously you get less traffic usage on your bandwidth on your network. So you could say at midnight every day, back up my data for the 24 hours. So you can do scheduled backups, you can do on-demand backups, or you can do event-driven backups as well.
James, one thing just on the previous question in terms of the lifespan of the SD cards. So I mentioned we recommend the Western Digital Ultra Endurance. So one of my colleagues in Korea has just emailed me to say that they are tested for 120,000 hours of footage capture. So that's over 13 years. And that's not just for continuous recording and re-recording, but also for pullback as well. So yeah, hopefully long enough, I would hope.
Perfect. It's good when you have a very quick responsive team like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm very impressed with our team there.
Yeah. For sure, upgrades for NX embedded servers will be provided in the same way as in standard server. So I think at the moment we're still figuring out the upgrade methodology for the NX media server running on the device. If I remember rightly, Rob, I think you might be
Correct.
involved in conversations
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, definitely the goal though is to make it as close to your server side deployments as possible. So we would hope to be able to do a remote upgrade in the same way as you do currently. So that is the plan, and we're working towards that.
Yeah, so I think there's some other people kind of looking at embedded applications for boards and different things, and they're having the same kind of conversations where there's some different checks and balances that need to be in place if you're doing the automatic updates the same way that NX does them. So we're just we're working directly with the VCA and the UDP guys in Korea to make sure that it makes the most sense and is the most stable way of doing the updates, basically. All right, moving on. Steve, is it a standard license? Sorry if I missed it, Steve. Yeah, Steve turned up late to the webinar. Yeah, Steve, it is a standard license. You're probably remembering back in the days where we had edge licenses for ARM devices. They no longer exist. Everything is just done on our Pro license. So there's no different license for wherever the software runs anymore. We try to make things as simple, as easy as possible. Gary Mercer asking for a friend. Sure. John from WSM said, great product / combination, NX / VCA. Thank you, John. We think so as well. Hopefully Rob and Kevin and Simon do as well. Where is the license stored? On the SD card? That's a good question. So our license would be stored in our NX Media Server database. So I'm assuming that's internal and not on the SD card.
Yeah, so licensing should be agnostic of the SD card. So certainly our the Pro AI license to run the analytics and ANPR and facial recognition stuff is all done onto the hardware. So I am confident in saying that is the same for NX, but I can double check that and make sure that's resolved.
Perfect. If we'd like to add NX embedded at the factory, how is license purchase / pricing arranged? Basically, who do I pay and how is pricing reflected? There's quite a few variables inside of that because obviously we have channels that things go through. So it's something that is a discussion topic. It really depends on what country you're in is a big factor on it, and how developed the channel is there.
I think, James, the general answer is, I guess it will be the NX license will be paid for through NX or your channels. It's nothing to do with us in that respect. We're just loading the enabler on there, and then they have to basically enable it once they connect it to the client, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's yeah, basically it comes out the factory with NX ready to go, and then we can introduce you to channels. We share a lot of the same channels VCA and ourselves in across Europe, as we have a close relationship. So we can just introduce you to the purchasing point. Thank you, no problem. Not a question, just some feedback. Thank you for the amazing presentation. All right, always nice to hear.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that's more for you guys than me, as all I've done is just talk, not actually anything. Steve Canning, good. And last question, what is the average cost of the cameras? Let's say at the start. I'm impressed that it took us that many questions until someone asked anything about cost.
Well, you know, there is a wide range of cameras. You know, you're talking about some sort of fixed domes all the way up to some dual lens type stuff. So, and we have a variety of channels that we go through. The one thing we've always prided ourselves on is that, you know, are we the same price as maybe Hick and Dahut? No, we're not, but we're certainly in the same price bracket as and probably less than Axis, certainly less than Bosch, certainly less than a Vigilon. So, you know, we pitch our product at what we believe to be the most competitive price, given everything that we provide within it. And our licenses are generally pretty cost effective. You know, we've seen people charging license fees for sort of £700 or £800 a time. And we're certainly a lot less than that. And it is a perpetual license. So once you pay for it, it's there forever. And we just give you free upgrades. More than happy to give quotes on particular cameras and prices. Just email me or any of us and we'll get back to you.
Perfect. Steve Canning then put a smiley face. I think he's just trying to win the last question battle at the moment, because every other question is right out. He's just added another one. Love a price question. Good. Thanks, Steve. Question from Roberto. In case of camera failure, can I recover the data in the SD card via another camera or an external application? So from the network optics side, yes, you can. As long as you have another media server installed somewhere, so whether it's embedded on the VCA camera or it is in like a just reachable on a computer or a laptop, and you plug the SD card on, then you can re-index our archive. When you re-index our archive, it will basically look through the NX media server file directories and rebuild its archive from it. So what you'll see is a camera that is offline, and it will have all the data inside of it. And then as a 5.1, you can actually associate that camera with your new camera, and it will merge the archives together for you. So if a camera fails, you can take the SD card out, pop it into a new one, re-index the archive to rebuild that archive from the old camera. And then you can use our new camera replacement tool to merge the data together. So it will all be into a single camera again. That's assuming the VCA doesn't wipe the SD card or something when you first plug it, put in an SD card, which I'm assuming it doesn't.
No, once it's mounted and initialized, then yeah, there should be no formatting. Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. And then obviously Steve's question at the end there, just so we can give him the last love across the question. I think that I appreciate everyone's questions. It's always really good to have this many questions on a webinar. I think it's probably one of the most questions I've got for a long time on a webinar. So thank you, everyone. We'll leave it open for a couple more minutes just in case anybody else wants to throw in a last minute question. If not, thanks everyone for attending, and Lee Taylor just threw in there, thank you for the presentation, very informative. You're welcome. And yeah, everyone enjoy their Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? I think it's Tuesday. Tuesday.
Keep up, James. Keep up.
It's all a blur these days. Oh, Steve just chucked another one on there. Better test my unit now. There you go, Steve, straight into it.
Yes, please, Steve. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, perfect. We'll give it another. He's still going. No worries, he says, Kevin.
Just while we're waiting to see if any more questions, I can always go over the facial recognition stuff again, just so you can see it. So just to give you an idea, we've got people coming in. As they come in, the bounding boxes that we're seeing here, that's been all provided by us and then transmitted and annotated onto the screen. And inside the search features as well as searching for groups, you could also search for years as well. So if you wanted to, we could really focus down and say, you know, let's show us everyone that's 26. That 26 is an approximate age that's coming from our age and gender analysis that's on the camera.
Right, I think we're all good at that level. Seems like no more questions are coming in. It's now 10:01, so thank you everybody again, and thanks to the guys from VCA. It was a really good presentation. I think everybody got a lot from it. So I'll catch you guys later, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of the team from VCA, and we can get you anything that you need.